Okay, got it. It is 9:01 and on March 7th, 2023, and I'll call the Weston Board of Education Policy Meeting to order. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks.
First item up on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Did everyone get a chance to take a look? I read through them.
Yep.
Does anybody have any changes to the minutes?
Nope.
Okay, terrific. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the February meeting?
I move. We
Okay.
approve the minutes.
Thanks, Sharon. Can I have a second, Steve?
Second.
Great, thanks. All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 All right, well, that motion carries, so those minutes are approved. And let's go back to the agenda. The next item, the first item up for discussion is policy 1325, advertising and promotion, which we discussed a little bit at our last meeting. And I believe we left things where there would be some changes, I think, from Mark coming forward. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. I've read through it. I see what you've done. I don't know, Mark, if you wanted to talk about it.
Sure. The file itself, it didn't need a ton of changes. I thought updating the verbiage of the title of the field to be more of what we actually use for the titles of the fields, and including the varsity baseball field and softball field was important. There's a lot more sports than just football played on the football field, so calling it the stadium field makes more sense, those types of things. I thought that adding a bullet in about the duration, which we discussed at the last meeting, was an important piece. And it kind of made sense to have the banners up because, one of the things that I've always been told is we don't want anything up permanently. So if we do it seasonally, where it can be up for a season and must be down for a season before it can go back up, it kind of ties in with what I think the board is looking for. And there was some things in there about the indoor usage. And I thought just cleaning that up so that it is in line with what we are doing, and it also opens up the opportunity for using the NFHS network, which we have been doing. So that was that piece. And I didn't put this in here, but Lisa and I did discuss about adding in some verbiage that just states consistent sizing of the banners so that they're, you don't have them all over the place and it doesn't look as uniform or as nice.
I think that's a great idea.
That's in or that's not in?
It is not in, but it should be.
Yeah.
I was always under the impression it was in. Someone told me forever ago that they had to be a certain size, and I've told everyone that, but now that I actually see the policy, it's not actually in there.
Yeah, that's great that they are the same size, because I think it looks much better. So yeah, I mean, we can add a sentence in there, I think, probably.
I have a quick question though. I understand my question was about having the banner had to come down for a season before it could go back up. Do we want to have that? Do we want to put any sort of flexibility in there? Maybe they do a change of art if they're going up for a second season, so it's not stagnant. Because if you have, I mean, how difficult is it to sell these, I guess is my question, because.
Well, and the reality is, if you look at how it works, so if let's say the Gridiron Club sells banners in the fall, they're coming down for the winter anyway, because we're not using that space in the winter.
Okay.
Right. And then let's say our high school baseball team puts stuff up in the spring. They're coming down over the summer because we're out of season at that point. And I don't think you want them just left up just because. So when they're selling the banners, they're selling them seasonally. That doesn't mean they can't go up in the fall and back up in the spring if a group, like Boosters was selling on the lower turf and they said, we'll put it up in the fall, take it down in the winter, put it back up in the spring. That's fine. That's allowed by the way the rule's written. It just keeps it from being kind of a permanent fixture and, us losing the right to control that.
Okay.
The other piece that we discussed last time was who has the rights for the fields. And the Youth Lacrosse Club is very interested in putting banners up this spring. I did bring that to the Booster Club just to see what their thoughts were. They don't plan on doing banners this spring, so they are fine with it as long as it is understood that that is for this spring and it doesn't grandfather them in to control that field for future springs. But so I don't know if that's something that needs to be written into the rules, and I thought we did, but it should be stated that Gridiron Club has the stadium field in the fall, Booster Club has the lower turf field fall and spring, the Diamond Club has the Revson field in the spring, and softball team has North House in the spring, which does leave some things open. No one has the stadium field in the spring really. Boosters could if they chose to, because we do run track meets up there. But I think as long as whoever wants to use it is running it through, whether it's me, whether it's the Booster Club, whoever we determine would be the vetting process on behalf of the Board of Ed and the superintendent, then I think we're safe, because we'll make sure that there's no more than 20. We'll make sure that they're uniform size, and we'll make sure that there's only one group, or maybe two groups are saying, hey, I'll get 10, you get 10, and we can share the money. And that's okay as long as they're in agreement on it.
Yeah, I think that's what's missing is because right now it reads that this is coming from somebody in the administration in terms of making all these approvals. So I think it's just a question for you, Mark, of how do you think this would most effectively run if it's running well with the Gridiron, the Boosters, and the Diamond Club, then I think we should specify that in there. With leaving you the right for complete oversight, right?
Yeah, I think you definitely want to have district oversight, because the volunteers on those committees, on those boosters change frequently. So having a district oversight, which probably would read superintendent or their designee, which would default to the athletic director. I think that makes sense, and that way we can kind of make sure that our boosters are getting first crack. And if they're not using it, then let's let other people have that opportunity. If it's going to, in the end, it all goes back to our kids.
Yeah, I think so. If it's specified which season those three booster type clubs have access to and which fields, then when there's a gap, so for a field that isn't being controlled by a booster club at that specific season, is that something then that you want to default to the administration to oversee, or would you prefer to keep it within the booster organization and just let them handle as they see fit?
It probably would need to come to administration at that point.
Okay.
So if you're talking about the summer for the baseball field or the softball field, well, we're not using it at that point. So to give the Diamond Club or the softball team that power, I don't know that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It'd be better if it's the school. Basically it's the Board of Ed making the decision, and at this point I would be the person assisting with that on your behalf.
Okay, I think that makes sense.
Yep.
So maybe we can have another draft of this with that, because with that language, we'll rely on you, Mark, for which field gets which booster in which season. And if you can work on maybe incorporating that clearly
Yeah,
in their section, then we can probably review it one more time. What do you think, committee?
Yeah, that sounds,
Well,
yeah.
two questions.
Dave? Yep.
Two questions. One, anything that's going to be displayed on school property has to be vetted by the Board of Education.
Right.
Anything, right? So, and then what happens when an organization, somebody wants to put up a banner who's outside of the Boosters or Diamond Club or whatever? Who do they go to? What,
Well, that's
what,
a, oh,
go ahead. No, go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah. No, what I was going to say is that's kind of, how the situation all came up
Right.
to happen, because we have this junior youth lacrosse league that is not affiliated with the high school lacrosse team. And they want to use the fields during a season where they're, I guess that is lacrosse a spring, is high school a spring lacrosse? Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
it is in season for high school lacrosse. So, but the high school booster team is not using the fields for banners at that particular time. So according to the way I think the policy is going to be drafted, they would then go to the boosters, since they're not using that, give them permission, and then, Mark and the administration would have oversight to make sure that the banners are appropriate. And then if it's a,
And then what do we do if the Boosters say no to that organization?
well, I think the only reason they would say no would be if they're having a fundraiser and selling them themselves. And I think that trumps any other outside organization, because that's the high school team that is using the field in season for that sport. So they should have the right. This was our discussion last month, was
Right.
the feeling that team should have the right to fundraise for that field since they're in season. Correct, Mark?
And to be fair, other than the Gridiron Club in the fall on the stadium field, we have never had 20 banners anywhere else. So I do believe that even if our booster club said, hey, we're going to sell banners this year, we have 5 of them going up, there would still be, if the youth lacrosse club had 5 or 6 or 7, that's still possible to do. So this may evolve and that may stop that, but that's why we have a maximum number.
It's just basically a right of first refusal for the team that's in
Correct.
season on their home field,
All right.
I think.
Yep. And to answer your question, Steve, when a group wants to utilize, so the way this came about is Youth Lacrosse Club came to me,
Right.
and said, can we put banners up? And I said, well, I think you'd need permission from the Board of Ed, which is why they then went to the Board of Ed, because we've never had a youth group ask this, and there wasn't anything in writing. And I said, and you would need permission from the Booster Club to make sure they're not doing it. So it's kind of what we've been doing in practice anyway. It just has never been written.
Okay. No, thank you.
Yeah, and I think let's take the time to get this right so it answers questions in the future. I think let's try to draft something that reflects the right of the Gridiron, the Booster, the Diamond Clubs in season, with superintendent or designee oversight, and we can take a look at it again next month, make sure that that's great, and send it to the board for a first read, then potentially the following month. And I think nothing in this process, however long it takes us to get this right, will prevent the Weston Lacrosse Club from using their banners this season.
And that was going to be right. That was going to be my next question, because they did reach out to me yesterday or last week to see how this all was going. And I told them that there was another committee meeting coming up. The policy hadn't been approved yet, so I couldn't give them any information. Is it okay for me to tell them the policy is still being worked on, but for this season, it looks like it's going to work out?
You know
so,
what?
because
That's actually, go ahead.
I was just going to say the policy as written right now doesn't preclude them
Correct.
from using it. So I think it's just your discretion. So let's go ahead with it, and then let's just get the policy right. So in the future, it's a very smooth process.
And I have a booster club meeting on tomorrow night, or next week actually, which I will confirm with them that they're not planning on doing anything and that they're giving their right this spring only to the youth lacrosse club.
Yeah, I think that works.
Perfect.
And Mark, if you want to, or whoever, I don't know if that's Jody or if it's Mark, but whomever's taking a first crack at drafting this language, if you want to send it to me before the policy meeting, I can take a read and see if it reflects everything we've talked about, and then we can bring it into the policy meeting in April, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I'll work with Jody, excuse me. Sorry, Jody. Once we get off this call, and because really all we're looking at doing is Gridiron Club would have the rights for the stadium field in the fall. The overall booster club has the right for the lower turf in the fall, and the lower turf and the stadium field in the spring. And the Diamond Club has Revson in the spring, and the softball team has North House Field in the spring. And really that's it. We don't have the overall booster club really only deals with these two fields, and we're only dealing with outside as far as banners go. So that would be the language really.
And the specs.
Okay.
Too.
Yeah. So Jody, if maybe when you and Mark, work that out, maybe you could send it to me next, and then I can kind of make sure it's consistent with what we've been talking about, and hopefully April it'll be a really quick approval, and then we'll bring it to the board in May.
Can we
Does
do
that sound like a good plan?
just to move
Yep.
things along? Since we're all in agreement that that's what it should say. Once they do it and they show it to you, is there any possibility we could get it in front of the board this month? Or do we have to have a vote on it in committee
It needs
first?
2 months anyway. It needs 2 months anyway.
Yeah, for a first read.
But
It
it,
needs
I,
a
don't wanna
first read
delay
and a
this
sec-
too much for these guys.
I think because
Yeah.
it needs 2 months anyway, we'll be in the middle of the season regardless. So
Okay.
I think.
And if we're okaying it for this year, it doesn't really matter when the policy gets
Okay.
formally approved, as long as we're good with moving forward with the youth lacrosse
Yeah.
club this spring.
All right, good. I
Yeah.
just don't want to have things get caught up in
Yeah.
bureaucracy. That's
All right.
fine.
No,
I
there's nothing in the policy that prevents any fundraising of any kind. It's just that the channels aren't clear, and it probably creates a little bit more work for Mark and Lisa until the policy is streamlined. But
Okay.
nobody's precluded from doing anything. So we'll move
And
it along.
we'll
as
add
fast as we
something
can.
in there about consistent sizing.
Sizing.
of-
Well,
Yeah.
you know what I think, if just real quick, if you look at the bottom of page 1 where it says with the specific location, size, and duration of display, I think we should just say with the locations, specific size, and the size has to be approved. That would take care of that. Just move specific. But that's my suggestion. The other thing is at the end of that line, identified by the superintendent or designee. Because
Mhm.
to be perfectly frank, Mark Berkowitz is the designee. I'm not getting into the minutia with this. I
Yep.
rely on him wholeheartedly. I mean, if he has any questions to ask me, but
Well, and that's
Yeah.
what happened. I had a question
Exactly.
about this, and I brought it
let's
to
just
you
put
because I
or
didn't know what to
designee
do.
again, okay?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. This all
Yes.
makes sense, and it'll move quickly. We just have to get it in writing correctly. That's all. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Everybody comfortable with that plan?
Yep.
Great.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So then we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the fundraising activities. I think at that point, we don't need Mark any longer, do we?
Yeah, bye, Mark. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Jody,
Appreciate
just give
it.
me a call. Jody, give me a call when you're done, and this should take 3 minutes. So, okay. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks,
You're
Mark.
Bye.
welcome.
Okay.
Hello, Dr. Henkel.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday.
All right.
Exactly.
Happy Tuesday.
Are you here for
Are
the
you-
field trip one, Tina?
I am.
So why don't we do that one
Sorry, I'm a
next,
little
so
late.
then you can go.
Sure. Let's
Okay.
switch the order. Okay.
So
Let me-
last meeting, should I start? I apologize.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, no, I'm
go.
just scrolling
I'm just
down
on
to
a
the-
roll today.
Me too.
So last meeting, originally, the original draft of the policy was updated and remains the same. We needed to add the administrative regulations to the second portion of the policy. The administrative regulations have been updated for both day field trips as well as overnight / international or abroad field trips. I do have a question around language that needs to be updated, which is that in the policy, when I define the different types of school-sponsored field trips, number 3 says international / abroad. The question is whether or not we want to say international or abroad, like we don't need both terms. I wasn't sure
Mhm.
which one we want to use, number 1. It's just a minor detail. International,
I would say international.
Yeah.
so we
Then
can
it
add
could
it.
cover Canada, Mexico. I mean,
Okay, great. And then the administrative regulations, although they're not in red, they do begin, Jody, what page, no page number, sorry. R6153 is the addition from last meeting, which includes the procedures for day trips as well as international trips.
Yep.
did you draft this, Tina, or did you? Because it was missing in our during our last meeting. Is it something we found and have just revised, or is it something we started from scratch?
So when we revised the policy portion that was based on Shipman and Goodwin's sample, we added the language around the district will follow the administrative regulations to implement such board policy. And then because there's no, Lisa, help me with the language that the lawyer would say, there's no requirements specific to field trips, that they are internal administrative regulations that the districts can develop. These were developed internally by me.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
we looked at models. We kind of like, there was more to the original policy, and it's like, no, these pieces are regulations. So we kind of separated out. Tina did a lot of work on this. And I really appreciate you taking the lead on this, Tina, and we ran it by the leadership team, because there's a lot, the devil's in the details with all this. So, in transportation and police. And meanwhile, as we're going through this, we're test driving it with some of these trips. So I think we're in really good shape.
It's pretty, it's all inclusive. It's certainly, yeah, I'm not seeing any cracks for things to slide between, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I like the steps. I think it's very
Yeah.
clear in terms of what happens and in what order.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was
Um,
nice.
We were very specific about timing. What I learned really quickly was that we needed to make sure that there was a lot of communication prior to these field trips, regardless if they were day or overnight. And that included communication to the school nurse, to parents, budgeting. And so that is clearly defined in here so that there's a ample amount of time for internal structures and processes to happen for approval, as well as time for, you'll notice with the international field trip admin regs, there needs to be an explicit process for board approval prior to continued planning around these field trips, which when I arrived may have been put on pause for a little bit. So now this has been reinstated explicitly, and now this is just kind of finalizing some of the paperwork.
Okay.
I think it
I
looks
would
great.
also say that we kept the use of the chartered buses and the private automobiles in school field trips. That was something that was left over from the previous admin regs that were already here that Lisa felt and I felt that was important to
The buses and the private automobiles, is that what you said?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And then also, if you look through the steps, there's a feedback loop here to make sure, and an approval loop that director of finance, curriculum instruction, HR, the busing. There's a whole it's a system around who needs to be communicated and approval process before any of this continues.
Okay. Are these, and this is just the first time I'm seeing, this policy, 6 months, 8 months, is that kind of a routine amount of, do we think that's an appropriate amount of time to give people to plan something like this?
For international, yes.
Okay.
It does require, it's a minimum. Most people spend more time than that because
Okay.
of scheduling, especially
Okay.
when it comes to travel, and airlines and hotels and such. But from an internal perspective for us regarding regulations, we need internally at least 8 months in order to get to an approval phase. But when it comes to planning on their end, they have been planning it even more so.
Oh, okay.
It's
All
just
right.
in writing.
Yeah, I didn't know if that was such a long time that we were discouraging future trips, but if that's been the standard procedure, then I'm sure that's more than appropriate.
I mean, if we can get them done sooner than that, obviously we will. I think part of it is that it does when we do international and overnight, there's an approval process at the curriculum and instruction board level as well as the full board approval level, and that too takes time to schedule and present. And so, in addition to the internal approval process, even before we present it to the internal curriculum committee and the full board, so. That was the almost like minimum amount of time that we would need internally to make sure that this workflow is efficient, and we can make sure all the people internally have enough time to process and ask questions if needed prior to it going in front of the board.
Good.
If that makes sense.
So if there's an opportunity for a field trip that kind of comes in over the trip, that's interesting. Would be educational experience. Are you telling me it takes 8 months for that to be approved?
Sorry, Steve, you were going in and out. Are you talking about an international field
No.
trip? I'm sorry.
No, domestic, something domestically.
I'm sorry, you're going in and out. Can somebody I don't know if it's me or Steve.
No, I think it's Steve. I think he's saying if it's a domestic trip that comes up, do we really need 8 months to get the approval for it?
For over
International.
Yeah, if it's an overnight trip, period, there are a lot of there's a lot of documentation, there's a lot of permission forms, there's a lot of medical forms, and there's a lot of planning with hotels and busing that we need to make sure it is in place before we get through the internal review process and present it to the board. Having done this already, we want to make sure that we have that information well in advance to have conversations internally and planning is complete. So
Sorry.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is important to know with this amount of time is we have to have parent meetings. That people have to come in. Kids that if it's an international trip have to
passports.
Get jobs, save money. Like there's a lot involved with it. Not all kids are getting jobs and paying for their trips themselves, but there is a great deal involved in this and things like the medical. I mean, we're fortunate. We're mostly where we go. We don't need special medical arrangements, but I'm talking about vaccinations, things like that. But this is pretty typical for international trips with other organizations. Like builders, they know a year ahead because of all the things that have to be put in place. And then there's no surprises.
And Steve, it says 6 months for domestic. So it's international, it's 8 months, and domestic is 6 months.
And what if it's just a day trip?
That's a different time frame. The day trips, I can't remember. I don't want to speak.
35 days.
Yeah, 35 days.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we pretty much know, like, I'll give an example. Dan Doak is already working on a different kind of trip for the 6th grade next year. He's already working on that now. He has a proposal. He's talking to the teams about it. That's, we want them to take a lot of time in planning, because the big thing is when are they going? You know, setting the date in the calendar that fits and everything it's important.
Are they still doing Camp Jewel?
Well, we'll talk about that in the future.
Okay.
But there's been a lot of, again, reflection, analyzing. You know, you've got to really look at, frankly, the academic return on investment for these trips.
Okay.
You know, and especially when it's an entire grade level going out. So they have been reflecting and working on it a great deal.
Okay.
The only other thing in reading this that I was that came to mind was, you know, especially these international trips are very expensive. Is this the policy where we would want to highlight, you know, what kind of financial assistance we offer for students that don't have this, or do we have that elsewhere in another policy that covers, you know, kind of extracurricular activities and it's referenced there? Because I know we provide financial assistance where necessary. First of all, do we provide it for field trips like this? And if we do, should it be in this policy or should it be somewhere else?
It's actually, I think I saw something about it in here that it can't be, it has to be inclusive of all students regardless of financial situation. Did I make that up in my head when I read that?
I think it's a slippery slope to put it in
I
here.
didn't see that.
I think that it goes in handbooks and things like that. And let me give you an example. Some of these trips, like going to Europe over April break, we do not provide financial assistance for people to go to Europe over April break. That's an enhancement. Someone that wants to go to the Met on a trip, you know, into the city, the principal works with the counseling department and the admin team to make sure that happens. But with overnight trips, like multiple days, like, oh, I want to go to Disney, we don't offer financial assistance for Disney.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, that being said, there are other groups like Weston Art in the past said, you know what, we will support, you know, we kind of partner with other organizations, but I wouldn't want to put it in the policy because we have no direct funding, even in the operating budget, to support that person.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay. All right.
The only component that may relate a little bit is in the policy regarding fundraising for field trips, which is clearly outlined here around, you know, anything related to fundraising in regards to the field trips still has to comply with the fundraising activities policy, and it's referenced in the policy portion.
Yep.
Okay. That must be where I saw.
Yeah, I did see that, but that's the next one. Yeah. Okay. No, you know, it's especially the day trips. Okay. As long as we have the right, as long as I think the key part is making sure students feel and parents feel that they have the right to, they know where to go with these types of questions, and if assistance is offered, how to obtain it. We don't want anyone to feel excluded.
But that's the beauty of this district. We know our kids, we know our families, and I can honestly say, even with Disney, community organizations found a way to get kids there. So we're very cognizant of that and making sure and being proactive.
Good.
Okay, good. Does anybody have any other questions about this? I mean, this is, you know, especially the regs on this, Dr. Henkel. I think, you know, it's going to be, you're going to implement this and see how it goes. And year one, you're going to learn, okay, this area needs more time, or this didn't work out in this way, or we should switch the order here or there. And that's the beauty of regulations, is that you know, we can easily change. I think the policy is, to my eye, is good. The regulations, we just have to see how they work in practice and revise as necessary, you know, throughout the coming year.
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions or thoughts?
I think it looks great. Tina clearly did a lot of work on it, so it's good.
Thank you.
Yep, I think so as well.
Great.
Okay. Since we don't, I think make the change to international. I think let's use consistent language throughout. But I don't think as a committee we need to see that again. If we want to bring this up for first read at our meeting, that's next week, isn't it?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Let's bring it for first read. Hooray.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
That'd be great.
I love when we bring it forward. Another thing that we're taking care of. It's good.
Yes.
Now,
Well, good
Jody,
work,
will you
everybody.
modify the word for me, or do you want me to send you? Yes, okay.
Yeah, Jody's great. She takes care of all of it.
I know you're muted, but I'm reading your lips kind of. Great. All right, I'll check in with you all later. It's great to see you all. Can I jump off? Are
Okay, thank you
good?
so much, Dr.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Kane.
Tina.
I'll
Appreciate
touch base
it.
with you a little bit later, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. Good to see you all. Bye.
Bye. Okay. All right, moving right along. So we've done advertising, we've done field trips. Okay, so that leaves us
Fundraising.
fundraising. Yep, 5147. Bear with me. Okay. Fundraising. All right, here we are. Let me just consult my notes and see where this one, why we're seeing this one again. Why are we reviewing this one again? Or did we not look at it last? I thought we looked at this last month.
Did we look at this last time? Because I don't
Maybe we didn't.
remember
maybe we
talking about the
ran out of time.
crowdfunding portion of it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's look at it and talk about it.
Okay. I had a I'll start if that's okay with you. The question that I had to do with use of crowdfunding activities.
Okay.
And where did this wording
Where-
come from? Is this something that is on page 3? Is this something that we got from our lawyers, or is this something that we've had in the past in our previous policy? Although I don't think this is updated since crowdfunding. 2019, possibly. Does anyone
No,
know?
I
where-
think this was here.
It was
Let's
here?
ask. Wait, Jody, we can't hear you. I'm sorry. It was
Jody,
here?
we can't hear you, and I'm a little bit confused as to which page 3 you're referring to, Sharon.
During for fundraising activities. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
Because I have no page numbers. That's
She's in the Sharon's in the regulations, which follows the policies of one page
Right.
on, looks like page 6 of my packet. And then immediately following that are the regulations.
Right. So in
Maybe
the
that's
packet,
page-
it's actually page 10 in the packet.
Okay, page 10.
I'm sorry. I'm confused.
That's okay. Usually I'm in that chair.
I have this, Jody, you gave me this, right? Jody, can you look at what I'm holding up? Because I'm confused with what you gave me. Maybe that's part of the problem, and I can't hear what you're saying. Okay, but I have this one that says the short version, but we're looking at the long version, correct? Like this short version, I don't know why we edited it because we're not considering that, correct? But Jody, I have a long version and I have a short version. I can't hear a word you're saying. I'm sorry.
So I think we must have put this on the agenda, but not gotten to it last month is the only thing I can think of, because I don't have any notes on it and I don't.
Yeah.
I don't even think I have it then.
I thought, okay.
We're out of order. We went out.
Sorry, everyone. I
That's
suggested
okay.
we went out of order and I'm more confused.
Yes, go back to the second policy.
I mean, I do remember
Oh,
talking
I
about
see.
the
Okay.
timing.
First,
I do remember talking about the timing for the fundraising though. So maybe we did touch on it briefly.
Keep
So
it
we
going.
doubled the timing. So we went from 4 weeks to 2 months.
Yep.
Okay.
I do remember Lisa saying she wanted more time.
Okay.
So
I guess
maybe
So
that was
what-
the only change we had to it. This
I
came
think we
up.
also wanted to show it to the admin team.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. Because it came up tangentially with respect to the request from the Weston Lacrosse folks. Because not only are they using the banners, they are
Yes.
fundraising. So I think we
Correct.
wanted to look at it at the same time just to make sure they were permitted to do that type of activity. And I remember you mentioning the timing. So that may have been all. What did the administrative team have to say about the policy? Did they have any revisions or thoughts?
No, I think it's the important thing is the clarity, quite frankly. That's what we need. And we had some of these things in place, not to say we didn't, but you to revisit it and practice it, especially at the high school where you see a lot of these different things where clubs, sport, groups want to raise money. It's important that we have everything in order, and it's being processed correctly. It is. I just feel better to make sure that here are all the forms. Here is let's review it, go over it, make sure everyone is on the same page, because it's been a few years, and then we have this whole crowdfunding thing that we're seeing happening.
Right.
So that was Sharon's original question. Is this new, the crowdfunding section, or had this been in the policy before? The regulation, I should say.
Jody,
No.
was that new? No.
Huh.
Okay.
I don't
Well,
remember. reading it.
2019, people were doing crowdfunding then.
Yeah, they were. So in this area, in the crowdfunding, it says any funds received from crowdfunding activities must be directly or deposited directly into a school activity fund and may not first be received by the employee, student, parent group, or other fundraising group. Fine, but that's actually a nice safeguard to have in place. But with the other fundraisers, there is no requirement for any of the funds to be basically put through a similar account.
Good point.
Yeah.
So not quite sure. I mean, it does say they have to basically keep meticulous notes of how much money is raised and where the funds go, but they're not being required to put it through an account like the fundraising or like the crowdfunding, sorry, is required. So I'm not quite sure if that's done intentionally and if so, why, and why not for the others. Any
Good
thoughts on that?
catch.
I mean, I'm not trying to complicate things, but I am trying to keep things, keep everyone honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good point, Sharon, because can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because generally these type of accounts are audited
Mm-hmm.
in the
Yeah.
audit process. So we should have consistency.
I think so too.
I think as an important prerequisite to that question, though, do we require our clubs, because this is, fundraising here is for basically any activity affiliated with the schools. Do they have accounts?
Yes.
Every
Affiliated
club
with
has
the
its
schools?
own.
This is what I'm thinking that we should add to it. Under criteria for fundraising activities, we should put something about that the funds received from these activities must be deposited directly into a school activity account. So what we have is this. We have school accounts, and Steve is exactly right. This is the stuff that gets audited. And that's why I wanted to make sure all of the paperwork was perfect as far as the forms. So imagine like we have a big checking account and it's divided up to Green Club, Cure for Cancer, Sustainability Club, Class of 2022. All of those lines are in there. And so when the form is to be filled out, when the deposit's made, it has to be identified that that's where it's going in that. So you can, for example, say, print out what the Cure for Cancer Club has been doing. And there's a printout, because I used to do that as when I was principal, to see what's going on. These are the deposits. This is the withdraw to donate to the organization. And that's what the district bookkeeper does. She manages all of these accounts across the buildings. The most active accounts are at the high school, although middle school somewhat, but that's what happens. And so those are just basically for clubs, but when they fundraise or they do different things, that's where the money goes.
So
What about sports? Do they have the
Yes.
same? Okay, so any time a kid, let's say they want to start a club, I'm imagining fundraising will be starting with chances are often with a new type club. So if a couple kids get together and say they want to start a club about who knows what,
Like sailing. Joking.
potentially.
You're just barely laughs today.
So then as soon as a club is established, that organization has access to an account. So then if they
Yes.
start doing some type of fundraising, they have a lawful place to put
Exactly.
the
So
money
for
that's right.
example, yeah, I want to start a club. So I have a club form. You have to have like 15 kids say that they want to join. You have to have a faculty advisor in the school. And this is all kind of part of why. You sign up, you open up your club. Okay, so you have a club. Then you say, oh, we're going to do a fundraising activity. So then our bookkeeper makes a line for that particular club. And then within our big account. And then that's how everything is processed. There's forms, everything that they use to, like deposit checks, whatever. Like, let's say, oh, this club is going to go on this trip, but people are going to pay their own way. The money gets put in there. And then the check is cut to like the bus or the tickets for an event or different things like that.
Okay, so there's nobody that's left out. There's no group of students that wouldn't have access to an account if they want to do a fundraiser.
But
Okay.
well, they have to have the advisor, and then and that's it. And then that advisor is also responsible for that account.
All right.
So
I
they don't
guess
need
my-
to have. Wait, let me just hang on 1 second.
Yeah.
Sharon. So they don't need to have board approval for their club to be in
No.
existence or whatever to get this started. Okay,
No.
so all right, so we're not preventing anybody from fundraising.
No, but
No,
I
no,
do
no.
think that we should add something about, funds collected at any of these activities must be deposited directly into a school activity fund.
I think
Correct.
that's right.
That's what I think we need to add in there. Since we have it for crowdfunding.
Number 12, I think we need to write that for 12. Because it doesn't say it, and I think that was a good catch, Sharon.
Yeah.
I think it's because we all, I know that, everybody knows it, but, that's why we have all those accounts.
Yeah. All right. Perfect.
Yeah. I think that's a good ad. Okay. Anything else?
That was it for me.
Okay. So in terms of the crowdfunding then, how the accounts work? I mean, usually when somebody sets up the Weston Green team would be the crowdfunding identifier as well, or would that be a parent or a student who's running that, and then you take the proceeds from the crowdfunding and put it into the school activity fund? Because it seems like our bookkeeper is going to have a tremendous amount of work if she's running crowdfunding activities.
No, I think that the crowdfunding portion of it is going to be my read of this is it's run by the organization that's fundraising. It's just the proceeds have to then go into the account.
Okay. I think that's definitely the smoother process.
Yeah.
Let me just make sure the language says that. Any funds received from crowdfunding. Okay. Yep. Any funds received from crowdfunding. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm reading the records part to make sure that complies with our student accounts. The fundraising activity must comply with all applicable policies and procedures. Detailed and accurate contemporaneous records of the fundraising activity. That's
Yeah.
great. Subject to inspection, good. Final report. Great. Okay. I think this makes sense. So I think adding that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
I'm sorry. I think on the form, the fundraising approval request form, we have to add something that reflects the crowdfunding. Like, is this a crowdfunding activity? Yes or no? If yes, please put the copy of, it's listed there, what they have to do for pre-approval, but it's not on the form.
I agree.
I think we need to put it on the form.
Yeah,
I
if
think
yes,
so too.
platform used kind of thing.
Do we need to define what crowdfunding is?
I think it's, I mean,
I mean, we just give examples.
Yeah,
I feel like we should. I kind of agree with you. I think this is gonna have to come back to you guys one more time. I think we
Okay.
should put, crowdfunding and then define it.
okay.
yeah.
Instead
I
of,
think
and they
that's-
have examples there of donors choose Kickstarter and GoFundMe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
but I mean, we should also think about any type of check on that, because there is a lot of fraud associated with some of these GoFundMes.
Well, I think that that's one of the reasons why they have the money needs to be put directly into an account, which totally makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah. Did you see recently? There's a story recently about an 80-year-old custodian who came back to work because they'd raised his rent. I think it was in Texas. They'd raised his rent
Yeah.
on his apartment, and the kids did a GoFundMe for him and raised over $100,000. So the guy could. They said their line in there basically was, "No one this old or no one 80 years old should be here cleaning up after all of us." I was like, "Well, then clean up after yourselves," but okay.
Yeah.
But it was great. I mean, it was really thoughtful. It was nice
Yeah,
that they
it
did
was.
that and allowed the guy to get back to his retirement.
Poor man.
All right. No, I think that's,
Okay,
yeah,
so
we
we'll
don't,
tweak it a little bit and then bring it back.
yeah. See what you can find on crowdfunding, if there's any safeguards in their definition or anything that we should be doing to check and make sure that nobody that starts a crowdfunding is going to be taken advantage of.
Like, okay.
What?
Crowdfunding. I mean, if somebody starts the crowdfunding process, if they are running the GoFundMe, they would be the ones taking advantage of others if they're maybe not using the funds for said reason. So if you're starting the crowdfunding, you just have to make sure that the money that's coming in on the crowdfunding is being directed in the appropriate way. So that's the main reason why I think they have them putting the funds into the account.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't use, I've never used it. So I'll defer to you guys on that. Let's just make sure that it's as protective as can be.
Yeah.
And as much oversight, we want to retain oversight at the district level.
Yes.
For sure. All right. So this one will come back to us in April at the
Yes.
policy?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So
And
hopefully
then
by
I think-
June, all these will get cleared up.
Great.
All right, so that leaves us with gifts, grants, and bequests. Is our last policy.
I didn't see. I have nothing on that one. That all looked
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I agree.
I thought this was coming to March. Maybe we're just giving it a final read here before, but I thought we had said this one could go forward to the March board meeting. Is there anything about this, Lisa, that you wanted to discuss?
So this is the one I was just talking about, Jody. It's the two short ones are not are not what we're looking at, correct?
Jody, you're muted.
I guess I can hear her through the wall. I guess
Okay.
I was thrown by seeing policy revised 2023. I saw dates on this and I thought, why are we doing that? That's not even the policy that we're looking at. Okay, so yes, we did go through, we looked at this. And I think part of why we did it was because of making sure that we're following all the procedures with the gifts and the grants. We looked at Wilton's, we looked at Westport's, we looked at Chipman and Goodman. We had some, it's specified, I think, a little bit clearer about the range of gifts and what needs, like if something's over $2,000, you guys have to approve it. If something's less, then it doesn't have to be bogged down with all of these things.
Well, help me understand though. The only thing I'm confused about is there's 3 attachments with respect to gifts, and they're all called 3280. We have 3280 first, which on my packet is page 19. So that to me is the policy, and it says at the bottom it's going to be revised in 2023, right? We have a couple of red line changes to it. So that's the policy governing gifts, grants, and bequests. Then immediately after that, we have the administrative regulations, which I think are starting on page
I don't
20
have
in my
page
packet.
numbers.
Okay.
You're not talking about these short ones, right?
But then at the end, at the back of this, we have another called gifts, grants, and bequests to the
Yeah.
district's purpose and overview. What is that?
That was my confusion. These 2 short ones, ignore them.
Yeah.
We don't want to use them.
Yeah, those were our originals.
Yeah, but see, because you put this on here, people were
But
thinking,
because I had to have those, so we showed that this is what we were adjusting. The longer policy, which is the third one that just says 3280 business, it starts at gifts, grants, and bequests.
see how it was confusing.
That's the revised.
These 2, put them aside. Those are the old ones. Okay?
But we still need the regulations, right? Or you're getting rid of the regulations too?
No, it's there. If you look at the one that says gifts, grants, and bequests for the district, it's a long one. Purpose and overview, types of gifts, receipt acknowledgement, acceptance, reporting, all of that, right?
And then
That's
the regs
the
after
original
that.
policy. Then that's what I was confused about. Then the next one, administrative regulations, there's
Uh-huh.
broken down. Gifts at $499, 500 to 2,000, over 2,000. That is the new regs.
So
There should
which
be an
one?
R here.
Which one is being submitted to the board for review? Packet A or packet B? The first ones or the second ones?
Not the first one.
But that's the one that's redlined.
I understand. That was
Okay,
my
okay.
confusion. Forget it. Sorry.
Okay,
It's,
all right.
it's not that one. And this should have a P on it because this is the policy, and this should have an R on it. This is the regulation. These are the new proposed ones. The little redlining in the other one is confusing. Just,
Okay,
that's the
just
old
disregard.
policy, put it aside.
Okay, so the the policy that we're going with is the second
Yes.
set, but it also
Yes.
doesn't say, okay, I got it. All right,
It's
good.
It's a completely new version. Because this hadn't been done in so long, there was a completely new version to it.
All right,
So we didn't want to go through and redline the short version because this is the new shipment policy for this.
oh, so this one came from Shipman.
Well, yeah, and Westport and Wilton are using it too because they use shipment. Yeah,
Okay, all right.
okay.
And you're comfortable with this?
Yeah,
Nothing
because it
specific
kind
to
of breaks
Weston
it
that-
down and it's a lot clearer, and it talks about when
Okay.
it's a substantial gift, you guys have to approve it. When it's
Yes.
between 5 and 2,000, you accept it, but I approve it. And when it's 499 and under, the principals can accept it, like a few yoga mats that they
Yeah.
got for Walter Rand. That would be example of the first one. We don't have to be, just buy them and I'm informed. The second one,
Okay.
that's where when they wanted to do I forget what it was. It was something with the PTO. It fell in that category. That's fine. And then we just, it's placed on the agenda for formal acceptance. Yes, we accept it. Thank you very much. The last one is the one that has to be formally approved. This
Okay,
is a considerable amount of money, over $2,000.
yeah, like our sports equipment.
Sports is that, or like one of the examples in what we were reading was gifts of, like, let's say the PTO raises $25,000 or $100,000 for a playground. That would apply to that one.
So, that's interesting. So if they go out and want to do a fundraiser, a PTO, do they require permission from the Board of Education ahead of that fundraiser?
No, but if they're going to, they raise money, they can raise money. If they're going to gift it to us for a purpose, that's why, frankly, I meet with them every month, the PTO presidents, because they shouldn't go down a road thinking they're going to give us something if we hadn't been a part of the discussion.
Yeah, like they raise money for a German curriculum or something, and we don't have a German teacher or German in our
No, but keep in mind the philanthropy for the PTOs, basically the philanthropy doesn't just give the money to the schools, they give the money to the schools based upon requests from the teachers and schools. So if for example, the band room needed, storage facilities for the instruments and the PTO, the philanthropy will then give that. And it's, it'll be over $1,000. But again, it's at the request of the band teacher.
Well, that brings up an interesting situation. So band teacher says he or she needs something new, goes to the PT. When are we aware of that request?
So
The-
this was,
go ahead.
this sometimes was a work in progress as I was over my tenure at the high school.
Right.
What has to happen is there's a philanthropy request. They fill it out. The teacher has to give it to the principal of the school first. It's
Right.
got to be looked at and signed. This kind of thing now, we have to reiterate that person, but they have to sign off. And a lot of times the principal doesn't sign off, or even if the principal does, the PTO says, we don't think that the academic return on investment is good. It only affects this small group of kids. We're not going to give it to you. That happens quite a bit. The thing I think that is important here is once this policy goes forward, that I review it with the PTO presidents, that the principals of the school review it with the PTO presidents, that anybody involved in giving us things needs to know about the parameters under which they need to operate. The PTOs are usually pretty good, but like for the one over $2,000, they have to have approval for me first, and then the board. So say, oh, we're going to raise money for this. Well, wait a minute, let's talk about it. We got to bring it forward to the Board of Education to vote on it. They don't want to get too far in advance. Unfortunately, sometimes what happens is people get overzealous and they advertise something, and that's where we really have to make sure that doesn't happen prior to the raising of the funds.
Well, and keep in mind what we're protecting against too is it's not just the PTOs that are giving gifts. And PTOs we have visibility into through the
Right.
policies that Sharon just identified. But take example the sports equipment that we just got at our last meeting, right?
Sure.
What if that had been some kind of outdated technology that we weren't able to use, we weren't able to plug it in properly, or we didn't have the space for it, or things like that. I mean, we need to be able to understand and
Sure.
not accept gifts if it doesn't work for us, or if it requires us to have ongoing financial responsibilities that we're not.
Correct.
There could be a bidding process. Sometimes they
Yeah.
want to buy something and it's like, wait a minute, check with Dan DeVito, Director of Technology. Don't just go buy this quickly. We have to make sure, and that's all explained in there about bidding. School personnel needs to be involved in the purchase. That's all important.
So Lisa, when for example, when the PTO paid for the college the college counseling area, remember when the PTO kind of redid that whole area? This is prior to my time on the board, but I was involved with it from the PTO, from the philanthropy aspect of it. That had to get board approval, I'm assuming, correct?
Well, now it wasn't that specific in our old policy.
Okay.
What we did was I was principal. I
Mhm.
basically told the superintendent, guess what? The PTO has this money and they want to use it for this. Isn't it great? This kind of, put some more guardrails around it. Now Megan could say that to me and I could say, that's great. We have to, by the definition of the amount, we have to bring it forward to the board.
Is that going to slow the process down? Is that going to stop?
I think when it slows it down, it's because we didn't have this. So this will actually help.
Okay. All right.
That's what
All right. Yeah. I don't want to have bureaucracy be the cause of everything coming to a screeching halt. So if you don't think that this is going to slow it down,
Well,
then
yeah, this is one of the reasons why we're doing it, because there was a situation in one of the schools where it wasn't processed and it was no one's fault. They didn't know what they didn't know.
Right.
And then, oh no, it's going to cost us a little bit more money because it was delayed. And it's like, yeah, it's going to cost you more money and you didn't check with the IT people. And, so this makes it very clear and we have to just keep reiterating it. Like anybody that wants to give a gift, people have to have this policy and get it out.
all right.
But
Sounds good.
That's what happened. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think this, especially if it came from Shipman and Goodwin, and if we think that this makes sense for our district and there's nothing unique that we need to incorporate, I think we can bring this to the March meeting.
Okay, good. So let's bring this one forward and let's bring the field trip
Ab-
forward.
Yep.
And then we'll find out more about the fundraising and the,
Advertising.
Advertising. And Jody, the
Advertising.
advertising, you know, if you and Mark want to send that to me when you've finished it, I can polish it up, make sure we're good to go.
okay. And then next meeting, I want to bring the suicide prevention. Is that what it's
Yes.
supposed to be?
Good.
Yes, I think
It needs to be brought forward.
I would like to bring that one forward. Yes.
Yes.
We've talked about
The administrative team will be reviewing it with Tracy Edwards next week at our meeting.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Good. Well, hopefully the advertising and fundraising will be quick now that we've gone through it a couple times. We should be able to approve those
Okay,
quickly and we can spend our discussion time on the suicide prevention policy.
You know, I'm glad
Excellent.
that we're doing our due diligence with all of these things, because one thing I learned is if you don't have the policies the way they need to be, problems. So this
Yeah.
is all
Yep.
very good. Thank you.
No, I know it's painful to spend the time on it now, but it's only a problem when it becomes a problem. So you want to
Well,
have the
yeah,
language clear.
and then it's like, and that's kind of what happened with this gift thing. It's like, we've got to do something. We can't have this. We got to make sure that everybody's clear on what's going on.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for your thoughts and your hard work. Appreciate it. Uh,
Can you and Steve stay on a minute after the meeting? I wanted to ask you something about tomorrow night.
Okay.
All right.
Sure. Let's, I'll call can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting first?
I so move.
Okay. Thanks, Sharon. Steve, do you second?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
See you guys later.
Thank you.
Bye, Sharon.
So,
Wait, let's turn on.